whatever book I last read that I thought was really wonderful, that's, kind of like my favorite book and my most influential book. But I would say that the writer that I probably most admire is Tim O'Brien. I just think he's an amazing writer. He's not a YA writer, but his work is very accessible to young people. He, writes about Vietnam, or wrote about Vietnam, and particularly his book that I love the best, that's called Things They Carried. And I used to have my students read that all the time, because it's just, he does that kind of, his voice is amazing. He has just such a strong and compelling voice. And his work always makes me laugh, and it always makes me cry, and sometimes at the same time, and I love that about stories. I just, I really want to feel every range of emotion, and he does that so well. I actually took a workshop with him one time years ago, and it was really funny because if you use like too many adverbs, or if you use like purple prose or anything like that, he would call you out, and he'd say, "You're goosing the language," which I thought was just hilarious. He'd go like that, "You're goosing the language," and then you'd say, "Okay, I'll stop doing that right now, so you'll stop saying that." But he's a great teacher too.
Have you heard the newest audiobook version of The Things They Carried, narrated by Bryan Cranston?
No.
Oh, it's worth checking out. I think it might be one of the finest audiobooks I've ever heard.
Yeah, what the voice is. I know Tim O'Brien's voice, so I'm not sure I would like another voice, because when I read that book, I hear his actual voice. But I bet Bryan Cranston's good.
Oh, he is, but not if you've heard the actual Tim O'Brien, then it won't be as impressive.
Yeah, he has a really different kind of voice than Tim O'Brien does, Cranston does. But I'll still listen to it.
Then are there some young adult authors that have influenced you since you learned what a young adult novel was, and that you've been reading?
Yeah, and of course my mind is totally blank right now. E. Lockhart. Is that her name, E. Lockhart? Or is there a middle name in there, something? But she wrote, I love her work. I think she's just amazing. She wrote the, I'm having a senior moment and I can't remember, but she's a fabulous writer. And I would say she's probably my favorite. I probably actually read more adult books than I do young adult books, but I think, man, when you get a hold of a good one, it's, young adult books are by nature about finding out who you are. I mean, you can't write a good young adult book if you're not looking at that question. You may be looking at some other things too, but you're always looking at that question. And she really, she's so honest. She really, she's funny and she's smart, and her characters have some pretty serious issues, and she's very honest about that. And I think that's really important in YA books. Well, I think it's important in all books, but I think that from teaching high school, as I did for more than 25 years, kids can handle the truth, and they want the truth, and they know when you're lying to them, and they know when you're avoiding the truth. And so I really admire the writers who come right up against it, and say the way it is. And there's another book that I love that's called Someday This Pain Will Be Useful to You, by an author named Peter Cameron, who's not really a YA author, but he wrote that one YA book, and it's a terrific book too. Very funny, very honest.
So you, I assume, try to be as honest as you can be in your novels.
I do.
Is there a line that you've drawn in the sand for which I will not be this honest? There's something I'm going to keep just for me? Or do you put it all there on the page?
I don't. I mean, I feel like you owe that to the reader, that you don't hold back, whether it's something that you know yourself from your own experience that is difficult to write or talk about, or whether you're holding back something that you know about the character. I think you should just say it the way it is. And I think that's true in life too. Gets you in trouble sometimes, but I always think it's a good plan.
And you're addicted to reading. I know you have an anecdote that you were reading as you were about to deliver your first child. You took the novel with you and you were annoyed that you had to stop reading.
I did. It was, and I remember the book. It was one of those great big fat James Michener books. It was the one where they were traveling around in Europe in the 60s in the pop-up camper. And I was probably about halfway through when I started having labor pain, so I took the book with me. And I was reading all during the labor pains in between. And then after the baby was born, I was so bad. It was like every time they would bring the baby, I would think, oh, I've been to have her for 18 years. I've got to get this book finished. That's how bad I am. Isn't that awful? It's just awful. But that is it. I mean, books are like food to me. And I'm a fast reader, which is not so great because I, like food, it goes right through you. I don't always remember a lot, but I have a basic, feel for the book and a sense of the place. I mean, to me, it's always like going to a place when you get into a book. It's like you go there. It's not as simple as just holding a book. You are there, and if it's good, I'm not good at leaving. I've got the new, J.K. Rowling writes these fabulous mysteries now under a different name. And I love those. And my husband bought me the most recent one, and it's like about this thick. It's really thick. And I've had it for 3 weeks, but I don't dare read it because I have to write grants for the Writers Center during this period of time of the year. And I know if I start that book, I won't put it down.
You can't read for 3 hours and then, okay, 1 hour I'm going to write a grant and then I'm back with, is it Robert Gilbert?
Once I get into it, I'm done. I'm cooked. I keep going back to it. I just can't. Week.
So what's the longest, if you know this off the top of your head, what's the longest reading session that you've ever had?
Oh, I read in the car, not while driving, but I'm a great passenger. So I would say that I've probably read from 8 hours or something. If we're going on a road trip, it's not unusual for me to just read the whole time. And I don't, I just love it.
Well, I would think that would make you the ideal passenger if I were driving, because then I could listen to an audiobook and we could both be in separate worlds and we'd have a wonderful trip.
You can't listen to an audiobook. You'd have to have earphones if I'm reading. And
that's true.
Yeah.
You couldn't put on some earphones and play some light music that would block out the sound of my audiobook?
That would work.
Yeah. I guess it would be really obnoxious if I wanted to listen to the same audiobook you were reading, and then you had just read the sentence that I'm hearing. That's not going to be a successful road trip. Let's not do that.
No. That's the stuff of which marriages come apart.
So that